Imagine living your life thinking you're in control, believing that every choice you make is truly your own. But what if that isn't the case? What if something buried deep in your past has been shaping your decisions, your fears, and even your identity without you ever realizing it? You wake up with habits you never questioned. You chase goals that feel like yours. You react to conflict in ways that seem natural. But what if these patterns weren't really choices, but echoes of experiences you barely remember? What if your deepest anxieties and limitations were not things you created, but wounds left behind from a time when you had no control? Psychologists have discovered that childhood trauma isn't just an event that fades over time. It embeds itself in the subconscious, quietly influencing every aspect of life. It dictates who you trust, how you love, and whether you believe you're worthy of happiness. And yet, most people go through life never realizing this unseen force is at work. What if the fears that hold you back were never yours to begin with? What if the way you see yourself, the way you navigate the world, was shaped by a version of you that no longer exists? To truly take control of your life, you must understand what is already controlling you. And that's exactly what we're about to uncover. Think back to your earliest memories, not the happy ones, the ones that made you feel small, powerless, or unworthy. Maybe it was a time when you were scolded for showing emotion, or when your pain was ignored. Maybe you learned that love had to be earned, or that mistakes made you unlovable. Now imagine that those moments never truly left you, that instead, they became the foundation of who you are today. A child who was constantly criticized might grow into an adult who second-guesses every decision, fearing failure at every turn. A child who was ignored might grow into someone who either craves attention or avoids intimacy altogether, afraid that no one will truly see them. A child who learned that love was conditional might now sabotage relationships, either pushing people away or clinging too tightly, never feeling secure. These patterns feel natural because they've been with you for so long, but they weren't born from reasoned choices. They were survival mechanisms, shaped by a mind that was simply trying to protect itself. The most unsettling part? Most people never realize they are still living according to a script written by a younger version of themselves. They don't question their fears, their desires, or their insecurities because they've never known life without them. What if everything you believed about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, even your ambitions, was shaped by a past you don't even remember clearly? And more importantly, what happens when you finally see it? The mind is like an iceberg. What you see on the surface, your conscious thoughts, your daily choices, your logical reasoning, is only a fraction of what's really there. Beneath it lies the vast, uncharted territory of the subconscious, where childhood experiences are stored, shaping your behavior in ways you don't even realize. Psychologists call this implicit memory. Unlike explicit memories, which you can recall and reflect on, implicit memories operate silently in the background, influencing how you react to the world. They don't just store events, they store emotional responses. If you were frequently criticized as a child, your subconscious may have learned that speaking up leads to rejection. Now, as an adult, you hesitate to share your ideas, second-guessing yourself before you even open your mouth. Then there's attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. The way your caregivers responded to you as a child set the blueprint for how you relate to others. If love was unpredictable, you may now feel anxious in relationships, fearing abandonment, even when nothing is wrong. If love was cold or distant, you may have learned to suppress your emotions, believing that vulnerability is a weakness. But trauma isn't just about extreme cases of abuse or neglect. It can also come from small but repeated emotional wounds. A child who is consistently told to stop crying learns that emotions are a burden. A child who is only praised for achievements, not effort, may grow up equating self-worth with success, terrified of failure. These patterns become so deeply ingrained that by the time you reach adulthood, They don't feel like something that happened to you. They feel like who you are. And here's the dangerous part. The brain, in its effort to keep you safe, doesn't just store trauma. It filters reality through it. If you were often rejected as a child, your brain may now assume rejection is inevitable, even when it isn't. If you were controlled, you might see authority as oppressive, even when guidance is being offered. Your past isn't just a memory, it's a lens through which you see the world. But what if that lens is distorting reality? What if your past is keeping you trapped in patterns you never chose? This is where philosophy offers a way out. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." But what if the monster is not outside of you? What if it's within, silently shaping your life? What if childhood trauma, unrecognized and unchallenged, is the invisible force dictating your choices, your beliefs, and even your destiny? Nietzsche believed that suffering was not just an obstacle to overcome, but a test, one that could either forge a person into something greater or break them entirely. He warned against the dangers of resentment, the unconscious bitterness that festers in those who see themselves as victims of their past. Instead of confronting their pain, they let it define them, blaming the world while remaining trapped in their own limitations. But Nietzsche also saw a way forward, the concept of amor fati, the love of fate. He argued that only by fully accepting one's past, without resentment or denial, can a person truly become the master of their own life. The challenge, then, is not to erase childhood trauma, but to integrate it, to extract wisdom from suffering, rather than letting it dictate our future. Carl Jung took this even further. He believed that unresolved trauma forms what he called the shadow, the hidden, repressed parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. The shadow is not just our fears or insecurities. It is also the potential we have buried. A person who was silenced as a child may become meek and avoidant, but within them also lies the potential to be a powerful speaker. A person who was controlled may grow resentful, but within them is the capacity for true independence. Jung believed that to become whole, we must confront our shadow, not repress it, not fear it, but integrate it. This is the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming the most complete version of oneself. And this journey begins with one terrifying but liberating realization. You are not your past. The trauma you carry may have shaped you, but it does not own you. The fears that once protected you no longer serve you. The limits you believe are real may only exist because you have never questioned them. But questioning them requires courage. It requires stepping into the unknown, dismantling the illusions you've lived with, and asking, what if I am capable of more than I ever believed? This is where true transformation begins. Realizing that childhood trauma has shaped your life is unsettling. It forces you to confront the idea that some of your deepest fears, behaviors, and limitations were never truly yours to begin with. They were programmed into you before you had a choice. But here's the truth. Once you see it, you can change it. The first step is awareness. Begin by observing your own patterns. What situations trigger intense emotional reactions in you? Do you find yourself overreacting to rejection, conflict, or criticism? These reactions often have roots deeper than the present moment. Ask yourself, when was the first time I felt this way? Follow the thread backward. Many times it leads straight to childhood. The second step is reframing your narrative. The things that happened to you as a child were not your fault, but how you respond to them now is your responsibility. Nietzsche's Amor Fati teaches us to embrace, not erase, our past. Instead of seeing trauma as a curse, ask yourself, what did this teach me? How can I use this knowledge to grow? Carl Jung's shadow work offers a powerful method for this transformation. Instead of suppressing emotions, face them. Write down the beliefs you hold about yourself. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve success. I'm always going to be abandoned. And challenge them. Who told you this? Is it really true? Or is it a relic from a past that no longer defines you? The final step is action. Healing is not just about reflection. It's about rewriting your patterns through intentional change. If you've spent your life avoiding confrontation, practice speaking up. If you fear abandonment, lean into relationships instead of running from them. The mind learns through experience. Every time you act against an old fear, you weaken its grip. Most people never do this work. They stay trapped in cycles they don't understand, repeating the same mistakes and calling it fate. But you are not most people. You are here now, confronting the invisible forces that have shaped you. And that means you have already taken the first step toward real freedom. The past may have shaped you, but only you decide what happens next. Think about this. If your past still controls you, is it really the past? Or is it still happening every single day through the choices you make, the fears you obey, and the limits you never question? Most people live their lives unaware of the invisible script they are following, one written by pain, by neglect, by the silent wounds of childhood. They believe they are making their own choices when, in reality, they are only reacting to old fears, repeating cycles they never chose. But awareness changes everything. The moment you recognize the patterns, the moment you see the strings, you're no longer just a puppet of your past. You are the one holding the knife that can cut them. Nietzsche believed that suffering could either destroy a person or transform them. Jung believed that within your deepest wounds lies your greatest potential. The real question is, what will you do with yours? You are not broken. You are not doomed to repeat the past. But you will, unless you choose to face it. The past has already taken enough from you. Don't let it decide your future too.